Let's get the latest on the ground in KwaZulu-Natal, where flood victims are desperately waiting for assistance. Our reporter, Linda Mnisi, is live in the province for us. Linda, we know that in the last 24 hours, the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government has been changing, its request to the national government for this to not only be declared a provincial disaster, but to be escalated to a national disaster. What are the expectations ahead of President Ramaphosa's address of the nation tonight?
In fact, Kathy, that's one of the big questions tonight. It's just after that request by the provincial government to turn the provincial state of disaster to a national state of disaster. You'll remember yesterday, KZN Premier Sihle Zikalala saying that, in fact, what this will do is bring in more resources to assist the province in dealing with the devastation that it has faced with. Now, this also comes at the backdrop of, the president's visit last week, Wednesday, where he had a first-hand encounter of the situation here on the ground. You'll remember the Premier even saying that we make this, this humble request, understanding that the President knows what is happening here on the ground. Now, the big question is it, a request that the President cannot take up, or is it something that they really need to look into, given, of course, what he says is an enormous devastation here in KwaZulu-Natal, which will cost around billions to currently fix. In fact, if you look at the number or the money that he says will be required to fix the infrastructure, it's around 5.6 billion rand that will be required to fix, the infrastructure here on the ground, let alone if you talk about the issues around housing and, of course, issues like water infrastructure, electricity. Those are things that still need to be taken into account, and having the national government support their cause will also assist greatly in terms of trying to rebuild quicker, Kathy.
Let's talk about the efforts then to respond to, the challenges that people are facing. Are we seeing any greater coordination, Linda, in terms of the responses that communities are able to get from government departments? Because there does seem to be a disconnect between what government is saying it is going to do and it is doing versus what has been able to reach people right now.
In fact, Kathy, from what we've been able to see on the ground throughout the course of the week has been communities really coming together and, the local business people coming together to try and assist where they possibly can. It's something that has been unfolding throughout the week while people, of course, continue to wait for government to, build up in terms of their plan and roll it out. Local businesses, coming with a strategy. In fact, today I was in KwaMashu where we heard of how the business chamber in that particular area has brought together local businesses, including local taxis, in terms of also donations that may come from residents themselves, saying that if you have any kind of food item or anything that you'd like to donate, you can put it in a black plastic bag and give it to a taxi driver who's collecting commuters around and going about their business to drop it off at a local a taxi rank. That's where the volunteers will come and grab these bags and take it to a local center where they will be distributed. And some of the things that these local organizations have been saying is that they're trying to avoid duplication of resources and sending it out to areas that really need them, some areas that have not even received aid, of course, given the fact that this is a devastation at a larger scale than we've ever seen before. So there are local efforts, or rather there are efforts on the ground by, of course, the people here to try and assist wherever they can. If you think about organizations like the Gift of the Givers, who's also assisting in terms of the search and rescue efforts in trying to recover those bodies. So that's what really we've been seeing mostly on the ground, and a lot of people also saying that, in fact, when they look at how government has been in terms of coordinating all of these things, it has been rather slow, and people have been feeling the pinch on the ground. You have people that have said that, they haven't received any form of help since the these floods happened. In fact, we visited one area today where the family has been waiting since Monday to get the body of their 2-year-old retrieved. It is only today that the gift of the givers was able to send a crew to the family to try and retrieve their body. So largely, really, it has been, those humanitarian organizations as well as just civil society.
When it comes to the expectations that people have over the kind of services that they'll be able to access right now, Linda, that is a big question, because people have lost crucial documents, your IDs, your birth certificates, etc. And I wonder, from a coordination at the ground level, because how the response is being explained by government is that councillors, effectively ward councillors, are now the central communication point for people in particular areas, and that they will be the disseminators of information, not just about what is happening in their communities, but also to inform people about government interventions and how they will be able to access those services. Have you seen that take place?
Well, in some areas, Kathy, you'll remember there are local ward councillors who have been on the ground since day one assisting. But in other areas, you have people complaining about the non-availability of ward councillors. You would have heard in that media briefing our colleagues asking about certain wards where people were alleging that ward councillors were a no-show, and people had to just take things into their own hands and try to move speedily in terms of search and rescue, in terms of providing aid. So on the ground here, it's really been dependent on a ward-by-ward kind of basis where, in certain areas there hasn't been that participation. And of course, as you importantly mentioned, the issue around the communication and really getting people to know where they need to go, to receive the support, given also the fact that there isn't network on the ground. Some areas are still without power, which means that they cannot access things like the media to even hear how to go about getting this kind of help. If you think also about the people that have lost their loved ones, they need important documents to be able to bury their loved ones. You cannot bury someone without a death certificate, and that needs the Department of Home Affairs to be able to reach these areas, some of whom are still inaccessible. So the role of ward councillors becomes very, very important, and the big question is whether or not they can carry out this task on their own, given the fact that some communities are already complaining about the fact that they haven't been able to be assisted. If you look at a case like water, in fact, in other areas where ward councillors have promised that there would be water tankers coming in, some areas saying that there hasn't been any water tankers. We continue to look for water in other areas, which then reduces the levels of trust in the ward councillor, because they haven't been able to provide to the community. You'll remember ward councillors are, of course, representatives of the community, especially when it comes to issues of the municipality and in council, really. So the decisions that are taken there become very important. So in this particular context, it really depends on which ward a person is.
Linda Mnisi, we'll leave it there for now. Linda will, of course, stay on that story, and later tonight we'll hear from President Cyril Ramaphosa. Will he be changing then that declaration in terms of the state of disaster from just KwaZulu-Natal, given the fact that the flooding extended beyond the borders of KZN?